Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 9 minutes before 8. Goodness me, being Transport Secretary is an all-encompassing brief. Clearly, it's everything from travel overseas, getting you away for your holidays, and even cycling. Now, it's the last of those three that Grant Shapps wants to talk about, and I promise you that we shall as he joins me now. But Transport Secretary, we must start with one headline this morning, The Times. Travel rules descend into French farce. You're the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps. What are you going to do about it? Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Well, look, I think most people, most of your listeners will expect the government to be on the cautious side of looking after international travel. After all, we've all come forward. 90% of adults now and got the first vaccination. We want to make sure that we don't allow a variant, a mutation of the coronavirus in that undoes all that good work. And so, rightly, I think the government's been on the cautious side of careful. With a particular concern in France over what's called the beta variant, and it's right we do that. And then when we come to review, which is actually in a week's time, we've got the 3-weekly review period. France and all the other countries will be looked at to make sure that they're in the appropriate categories.
You'll be aware that your colleague Dominic Raab told a number of broadcasters yesterday, including myself, that the decision concerning France seems to be based on the Reunion Island that is 6,000 miles away. Why?
I think the point was that the mixing of the virus. In other words, of course we know it started in South Africa, the beta virus reunion into France, but the actual data, the actual reason that the Joint Biosecurity Centre flagged France was because of cases actually in France. Just to clarify, so reunion is part of the story, but the actual issue.
So beta is running rampant across France, is it?
Rampant's not correct, but what we don't want to do, we've seen very, very, very low levels of beta here. You'll recall we put South Africa on our red list very early and stopped the flights because we've had very, very low levels. The concern medically is that, scientifically, is that you could have what's called vaccine escape with the beta variant, which we are very anxious not to see here because we don't want to undo all the good work that's been done with vaccination. So it's a safety first.
The number of cases of beta in France has fallen and accounts for 0.6% of infections. Still, you and your colleagues keep France on the Amber Plus list. For the French government, it's discriminatory. For the UK tourism industry, it's madness. And I'm hearing from you it makes sense. 0.6. Why?
I don't know where you're getting that information from. The most up-to-date information is available on a site called GISAID, G-I-S-AID. That's the international site where all countries upload their data. Last time I looked, it was considerably higher than 0.6%. But as I say, we'll look to our scientists to provide the latest data and information and alert us to their concerns, and then we'll act according to that. So I think it is important to follow the science on all of this. And just for the information of your listeners, this time next week is the next review of the traffic light system for all of the countries in the world. So we'll be able to.
So no news on France until next Friday.
No, that's not today.
Until Friday.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And Thursday and Friday.
Okay. And lastly, on the French aspect, how are relations between Westminster and Paris?
No, you look. I spoke to my opposite number, Jean-Baptiste, just yesterday, and I saw him last week. So relations are very strong. We understand, at different points during this coronavirus, both countries have had to act sometimes very, very quickly. You'll remember back in December, that President Macron closed the border entirely because he was concerned about what we now call the Delta virus, sorry, that was the Alpha variant, the Kent variant, if you like.
Yes.
And they acted very, very quickly, easier. And we understand, and we're still able to be, good friends with our friends, colleagues, and neighbours.
Okay.
We will get this resolved, I hope.
Right.
But we do have to put the public's interests first in the United Kingdom. And that's what we've been doing.
Just quoting from the Times newspaper today, beta accounts for 0.6% of total infections in France, according to the latest data from the GISAID website. So we both need to go and reflect on those figures, Transport Secretary?
Yeah, that's right. Well, if you go to GISAID, you can look this up for yourself. I suspect it depends on exactly which upload of data you look at. But certainly beta was several percentage points in France. When the decision was taken, it was still, I think, 5 or 6% in France. As I say, we're now coming up to another review, so I'll come on your programme.
Well, I look forward to that. It all sounds like beaucoup de ballon to me, but we'll move on to other matters. Now, I mentioned you also have the cycling brief. We're about to spend nearly £350 million in some kind of revolution as regards cycling. What can we look forward to, Secretary of State?
Yeah, big boost in the cycling and walking budget. You can look forward to a summer of cycling. My line for you today, having just seen the fantastic news overnight of 2 Olympic medals, a gold and a silver, in BMX cycling, is you don't have to be an elite cyclist to jump on your bike and enjoy the many benefits of being able to get around quickly. And with this money that we're putting forward in this package today on better cycle lanes, better walking schemes, and a change in prioritisation, actually. So one of the things we're doing is in the highway code, we intend to change that. So we prioritise, if you like, more vulnerable road users first. People who walk, people who cycle, before cars and HGVs and the rest of it. So a big prioritisation for making it easy for people to get around.
What does that mean for drivers then? What added responsibility is there for people in motor vehicles, Secretary of State?
So what we're saying is if your vehicle is bigger and heavier, broadly speaking, so a car, but then above that a lorry or a coach, then you should always be mindful of the if you like the more vulnerable party on the road, which would be a cyclist, or a cyclist would need to be wary of a walker, give way to the walker, and so on and so forth. So we're trying to prioritise, I think, in a sensible way, the use of road space to make it safer for people who would otherwise be more vulnerable.
Just a couple of other conversations while I have the benefit of you on the line here. You'll be aware that you and your colleagues are sticking to August the 16th. Indeed, the Prime Minister telling me that it was nailed on. But over in Wales now, as regards the pingdemic, you will no longer have to self-isolate if a close contact from the 7th of August. So why can't we do in Croydon what they're doing in Cardiff?
Yeah, well, it's only 2.5 weeks away.
If you're running a business, that's a long time, Mr. Shapps.
Yeah,
you say only 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, but I should point out that 1 in 3 people who are told to self-isolate do go on to develop symptoms or develop coronavirus. So
Wales are being irresponsible then?
Well, Wales have typically been
ahead of us.
How can I put this?
Ahead of us? Why don't you put it in? Because we're going to have to continue to self-isolate until the 16th of August. Wales is going on the 7th of August. I note that Scotland seems to be relaxing on the 9th of August. So it's just you blokes who have fallen behind.
No, I was going to say Wales has generally, and Scotland actually, have generally been a bit more cautious, a bit slower on other relaxations. So this is, I think, a rare occasion where they're going faster. We're having to judge it within the English context, and we judge that the 16th is the right date to go for. As I say, it is one of the last things that we can do to stop the spread of the virus. Now we've unlocked everything else, which, by the way, we announced the roadmap before other areas. So I think it is important that we just use that last tool to the best of our advantage. But we have put schemes in place now, nearly 2,000 on-site testing at work to allow people.
You can understand why the good people of Welwyn Hatfield and the whole of England are a little concerned as they see friends and loved ones in Scotland getting greater freedoms sooner, and indeed Wales as well.
Well, if I may,
how do you justify that?
I was going to say difficult to speak for everybody in Welwyn Hatfield and Boulogne, but I tend to find that my constituents are quite cautious on this, perhaps more so than radio hosts, I'd say. And people want us to be careful and unlock carefully and not throw it all away. So, I think it's only 2.5 weeks away, but I do think that we need to use the very last lever that we have to stop the spread of coronavirus, and that's what we're doing here. Because, as I say, it turns out that actually 1 in 3 people do end up developing coronavirus when after they've been asked to isolate. So important to use that where we can. Final question: do you agree with the so-called no jab, no job policy that seemed to be one of the ideas from your colleague Dominic Raab? I think it's a reality that for some companies, they will say we need our staff now to be double vaccinated, either depending on their business, or in the case of, I think that was Google that they were referring to, obviously a US company. In the US, they have much, much more vaccine hesitancy.
Would you introduce that at the Department of Transport?
Yeah. No, well, actually, I look at the stats of the Department of Transport. It's excellent. People are getting themselves jabbed. And actually, the country as a whole, nearly 90% of adults have now had their first jabs.
Yes.
Assuming they all come along and do their second, we're not having to turn to compulsion. Of course, if you want to travel internationally, you will need to be double vaccinated almost everywhere.
But if you want to get
world.
through the front door of your office or factory, you don't agree that you have to have had both jabs. Just last.
Well, that will be for individual employers to decide. But what I am saying is, it just makes perfect sense to get a vaccination. Why would you not want to not only protect yourself but your loved ones and people that you don't even know, who all get protected when we're all protected?
I'm grateful for your time as ever, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, appearing here on LBC. Where at 2 minutes after 8, news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Boris Johnson is being urged to bring forward the date when fully vaccinated people in England won't have to self-isolate if they're a close contact